just when we thought we couldn't get lower in terms of GPU performance, we got lower. That's right, today we'll be doing an R9 270 video, and I didn't know how to do a better intro. Hey guys, welcome back to Javon Rule 16. I am your host, Javon. Today we have a brand new benchmark suite. Today we'll be testing out the new GPU I got, the R9 270 non-X version, which I bought on eBay for $17.20. So that's pretty cool, right? Considering it was 20, and I even tried to negotiate down to 17. I'm cheap, okay guys, I'm cheap. Now the R9 270 released back in 2013, so this is going to be interesting. It has 2 gigabytes of VRAM. We're running with 900 megahertz for the core clock and 1400 for the memory clock. That's going to be interesting. So I'm running this with the Intel Core i3-10105, 4 cores and 8 threads, clocked at 4.2 gigahertz. We have 32 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM and dual channel memory, and running at 226-67 megahertz, and we're running everything on an SSD, multiple SSDs actually. We do have 2 hard drives in the system, but they won't be a factor. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to please leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, and let's get into these benchmarks. I guess this is gonna suck. First up, we have the Callisto Protocol, which all things considered probably should have lowered it down more. But at 1080p low with FSR set to performance, we were getting over 30 FPS on average, but look at those frame times. That's not fun. And I did notice a lot of drops in between. I would recommend dropping this to 720p. I have no idea why I decided to do 1080p on this one. I mean, it was running at 1080p, but it's not going to be fully playable. When you get into really demanding scenarios, it's going to dip like crazy, this is a demanding scenario. But yeah, 1080p will not be smooth. I'd recommend 720p with FSR set to performance and capping the FPS to 30, because Callisto Protocol isn't hard to run necessarily if you have a somewhat decent GPU, but yeah, with this stuff, it can really get you down. Dead Island 2 tends to run quite well on most hardware, so I didn't really have an issue with this one here. I was like, hey, this is playable. At 1080p low with FSR set to performance, we were seeing once again a 60 FPS average, but we will the 1% lows because I did run this one on a hard drive, so keep that in mind. As you can see, the core clock, the GPU sits really cool in the system, only 55 degrees. It's probably the coolest GPU I've ever had when maxing out its graphical performance, but hey, I enjoyed this. This is a playable experience. This game still looks really good, and well, what more can you want? It's kind of crazy because the R9 270 holds DirectX 12.1, I think, or 12.0, so it still manages to play a lot of the modern titles, which is quite nice. I'm gonna be upfront. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart ain't cutting it, bro. Yeah, this one ain't cutting it. Unfortunately, this one ain't. No, that 1% low is rough. Though at 720p, very low with FSR set to ultra performance, we were getting around 24 FPS on average. That is nuts. Now, once again, this is a more intensive area, but there are a lot of intense areas in the game. I don't recommend this to be playable on the R9 270. It just can't handle it. The VRAM is completely maxed out, and well, an overclock will not help you either. Unless you want to play around 20 FPS the entire time, then go for it. You know, you'll get over 30 at some points, but not many. Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered always surprises me how it seems to manage to run with these games, especially an open world game like this. At 720p with very low, set with FSR set to ultra performance, we were once again seeing over 30 FPS on average. In fact, sometimes the frame rate was going up even higher into the, as you can see in the 50s, once we got higher over the buildings. I'd say that this was playable, which is surprising to me because it's Spider-Man Marvel Remastered. But hey, all the same, it runs. I can't complain. Once again, when I realized that we're hitting close to 30 FPS when we are at the very lowest settings at 720p with FSR, it is a bit of a stretch, but I'd say this is still playable. Look at that 1% low at 28. It's still playable though. You can still have a great experience. Like I said, this graphics card only cost 17 bucks. 17 bucks to play Spider-Man Remastered is pretty awesome to me. Resident E4, Evil 4 remake is next up on the chopping block. Those 1% lows, bro. At 720p, very low, set with FSR set to performance. Once again, we were seeing over 40 FPS on average, which was very happily welcome for me. But yeah, the 1% lows, we were seeing a bit of stutter every once in a while with this one. Once again, I had this one on a hard drive, so unfortunately, take this one. Take that 1% low with a grain of salt. It probably won't be that bad if you're using an SSD. But yeah, it runs. This is playable. This is playable. You probably don't even need to go this low. I'd cap it to 30. You'd probably be fine. And then just put it down to episode like balanced. Final Fantasy VII Remake always runs well with low end hardware as long as you do 720p and put everything on low, which is only two options realistically. But 720p low, we were seeing over 60 FPS on average. I was getting dips into the 50s though, quite a bit. So I imagine once walking around Midgar, you will be more. It's more going to be into the 40s and the 50s than the 60s. But regardless, the game is a smooth experience. Still on an R9 270. Once again, this graphics card came out in 2013. 7 years later, still able to play a game from 2021, 2022. That's impressive. Still. God of War has been added to the suite again for some specific reason or another, because once again, not every game ran here. But at 1080p original with FSR set to performance, we were seeing over 40 FPS on average, which is quite nice. We were seeing a good frame rate here. God of War is a bit older than a lot of the others, coming out in 2018 and whatnot. Obviously, the port came out in 2021, but you know what I mean. The game is very playable here once again, and I can't hate on that. It's God of War. It runs. this was certainly an interesting part, one on my part. Baldur's Gate 3. I actually tried running this on this. At 720p, very low. If it starts at the ultra performance, I wouldn't recommend this, damn it. I wouldn't recommend this. We are seeing about 38 FPS. It's like more like in the 40s, but not really. You can see that hitting 30s on average, but look at them frame time, and that's the inside area. Imagine what happens when you get out into the main world. It's not gonna be pretty. I'd say Baldur's Gate 3 is not playable. I seem to be even running into a CPU bottleneck. Even it's just kind of crazy to me. But regardless, yeah, this one ain't playable. I wouldn't recommend this on an R9 270 unless you want to suffer through pain. But other than that, it looks good right now, don't you? I mean, some areas will be completely fine, but at 1 FPS, 1% low is ridiculous. And finally, we have Cyberpunk 2077. That's right, Cyberpunk has been added back to the test suite as well. At 720p, very low if FSR to ultra performance. We were seeing over 40 FPS on average. Cyberpunk was playable. You know, it's an old game. It's getting a lot. It got a lot of updates, which actually did push it, but it is still playable to today's standards. I could not hate on this. I thought this was pretty cool. I'm like, hey, we can play some Cyberpunk still. That's pretty much it. But once again, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to please leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, and stick around for more epic content. What I can tell about this is the R9 270 still has some life in it. And once again, if you're on a very tight budget and you still want to play some of the modern games, this can get it done. Like I said, this is going very cheap on eBay at this point in time, around 20 to 30 bucks realistically. You can play some sweet games here and still have some great experiences at 720p at least, if you're, being specific about it. But other than that, I thought this was fun. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video once again, and I will see you guys next time.